Hello again. So by now we should have all of our blocks sewn together so that we have our quilt top basically done. But now we have to put on our border. So as you see, I did put a top piece on my border, and I also have my bottom piece sewn on. So now we have to put the sides on. A lot of times I do have enough material that I don't have to piece my side strips for the borders, but this time I did because I didn't have enough lengthwise to fit the sides of the quilt. So we're going to sew the top and bottom on first, and then we're going to sew the sides on. So then after that, we will sew our backing together, which we'll have to piece it together because I think it's not going to be wide enough. Normally for a baby quilt, I can get it wide enough and long enough to fit so that I don't have to piece it together, but this one's a little bit wider than I normally make. So we're gonna have to piece the backing together in a couple strips. So I had to buy myself some extra material because I didn't have enough material. So we'll be doing that, and then after we put our backing together, we're going to put the quilt together with the 3 layers. The quilt pieced top and your batting, which I have batting. This is a polyfill extra loft. I like it because it makes the quilts puffier. I like the puffier look to the quilts. It stands out, and I just think it looks nice to have it, puffier. That's the whole point of having a quilt, to have that puffy design stand out. So we want to make our backing wide enough for our quilt top so that we have a little bit extra sticking out of the sides and the length, so that when we quilt it, we have a little extra to hold on to in our hoop, and so it's easier to manage and to quilt. So that's what we're gonna do after we get our our borders put on the baby quilt. Also, we will need, matching thread. I suppose you have this is a piecing and a quilting thread. You can quilt with it, but I like to actually buy a bold hand quilting thread. Where's my camera? It makes the quilting actually stand out a little bit better. I do use the other just regular hand quilting threads, but I started using bold on some of my quilts because the bold is a heavier thread and it actually doesn't break as easily. Plus it makes the quilting stand out a little bit nicer on the quilt top. So that's what we're going to be working on today. I cut my strips 2.5 inches wide, and then you measure your quilt top and piece it together if you have to for the border, and sew the top and bottom on first, and then sew the sides on. And remember to press them out, press them to the darker side of the quilt so that they're all going one way. So when you stitch in the ditch, then it's easier to sew because you have one less piece of fabric. So your stitch in the ditch, and the ditch is where you don't have the fabric ironed to. The side where you have the fabric iron to is going to be a little thicker, and that makes it harder to quilt through. Though when you do put your quilt top and your batting and your bottom layer together, sometimes the fabric will shift, so it might move over, you know, to the other side. So when you're quilting, you just have to, you know, figure that out and sew, you know, where you don't have that extra material, because it is a little bit harder to sew through. So that's why you sew it all, or iron it, press it all to one side, if you can keep it that way. So sometimes it's hard to keep it that way. You just have to work around it. Well, so that's what we're gonna do today. I'm already at 6 minutes. So since my internet is so slow, I'm gonna stop it there, and we'll see you next time. And have fun.